Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. A non-governmental organization, NGO, is a non-profit making, non-government affiliated organization. It is a voluntary group of persons or organizations that pushes for better public policy and provides services for social or public utility welfare, if we choose. This might not be the exact description or definition of an NGO, but it captures the fundamental elements that orientate the work of a non-governmental organization. We are talking about non-profit making, that is public service. We are talking about not affiliated to any government. We are talking about civil society. It provides services for social or public welfare, non-profit making. That's the common good. In fact, non-governmental organizations have helped Cameroon both in human and infrastructural development. However, in Cameroon, like in other parts of the world, where there are loose ends of the control mechanisms, the flip side of non-governmental organizations takes precedence and may become a smooth path for money laundering, funding of terrorism, and other forms of crime. The banning of some NGOs by the Minister of Territorial Administration is a Regalian government gatekeeping duty to enforce the law, protect the citizens, state institutions, and safeguard the sovereignty of the nation. This is Press Hour, and I am Kilian Dantifon in Yaoundé. You're welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Joining us, this is Press Hour, and we are broadcasting live from Studio 4 of the Production Center, CRTV in Balatu. The flip side of NGOs, dangerous. That's what we're going to look at, knowing that NGOs are of public service. They provide good services. They are humanitarian groups. But what when we look at the flip side? And this week, we had the outing of the Minister of Territorial Administration, who banned a good number of them, attributing the sources of financing as not being clear, and they could only be to fund things that are not Regalian, that are not Republican. To talk about this topic today, we have invited people of the law. We have invited directors and owners of non-governmental organizations. We have also invited political analysts and journalists to dissect this topic for us today. Now meet Barrister Fombat Munjem. Barrister at law, welcome. When I think about someone interpreting legal things on this set, the first person I have in mind is you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Kilian. Good day to the co-panelists. Good day to CRTV televiewers. Once more, we're here and ready to share knowledge. The idea is for people, when it has to do with NGOs, we want to paint the picture of what ought to be and what is actually prevailing, so that we know who is doing the right thing and what ought to be done to make things go right.
When we will start, I'm going to ask you, when we start the discussion, to talk about the 1990 liberty laws in Cameroon.
That's right.
Some people are attributing the ban as contrary to the liberty laws. Just in 30 seconds, can you situate us?
NGOs are guided by two laws. There's a 1990 liberty laws. We have the law of 1990, and then we have the law of 1999 on the non-governmental organization. Those two laws, they actually give us the composition or the creation of NGOs, the management of NGOs, and conditions under which NGOs can either be suspended or banned, and then the recourse that NGOs have, that NGOs can take when they are banned or suspended. So the law is very clear on that one. We'll dissect, we'll see that everything is clear. If everybody respects the law, I think there will be no conflict.
Thank you very much, and permit me to introduce Ateki Seta Caxton, who is the Executive Director of Network for Solidarity, Empowerment and Transformation for All, New Seta. That is an NGO. You're welcome to our set.
Thank you very much. It's an association, not an NGO. I'm very happy to be here on set to talk about the current issues affecting our sector. Good afternoon to everyone who is watching.
Now, you're welcome. It's an association. It is national.
Yes.
Is it governed by the laws governing the NGOs or by the 1990 Liberty laws?
So associations in Cameroon are governed by the 1990 law, and NGOs are governed by the 1999. So for you to become an NGO, you must first exist as an association.
Okay.
And then for 3 years minimum, and then you apply to obtain the status of NGO, and that is done at the MINAT.
Thank you very much. MINAT came out to ban some of them, which according to him and the law, of course, they are not operating the way they're supposed to. James Akaba is the country director of Open Dreams. Open Dreams is not an association, it's an NGO. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Yes, an NGO, an international NGO.
Mm-hmm. Now, are you governed by the laws of this country?
Yes, we are governed by the 1999 laws. We've taken very good mastery of them, and all the time in our work we are always conscious, and we strive to do our best to make sure that we are compliant with everything that is expected of us. We play our own part while also expecting the government to play its own part.
Now, your NGO, Open Dreams, was not on the list of those that were banned. Are you saying that you are clean, or that the hand of MINAT has not yet come to control to keep your own NGO?
As far as I know, and as far as we've been operating, we've been compliant. We've been doing the best we can do, making sure that we are focusing on our mission, which is in the area of education, making sure as many Cameroonians as possible benefit from the opportunities. We work alongside with government institutions. We make sure people who are deserving of opportunities get them. We function at the fringe level. Let me say at the fringe level means that we're not receiving that much money, but then we are doing a lot of work. Sometimes I don't want to talk about what we do. I always want those who are the receiving end, to make the noise. But then, as far to this date, we've been doing the best possible, out of patriotism, contributing in the realization of the SDGs, working very closely with the United Nations, government institutions like the Ministry of External Relations has been very collaborative, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Higher Education, Ministry of Post and Telecommunications. These are people who are key partners in our mission. We have right now students, Open Dreams scholars, doing internship there, contributing to research, and we find the partnership very healthy.
Thank you very much. When I bring you to press, you don't hide what you're doing. You speak out yourself. Yes, because so many people follow press and those you are helping may not be able to come out to the public and then give a testimony of what you are doing. Now, Teneng Lucas Chefo is the publisher of the Reporter newspaper. You're welcome.
Thank you, Kilian. Good afternoon to my co-panelists. I would like us to do some small correction. You said the Minister of Territorial Administration banned. When you ban something, maybe it's for life. I think they were suspended. Okay. They were suspended for 3 months. I think that's the right word to use, because when you say banned, I think it becomes problematic. The NGOs and the associations were suspended for 3 months, and that is what the law says. Within 3 months, investigations will be done. If investigations are done and they realize that they are faulty, or they can now actually ban them.
Okay.
Or say dissolve. I don't even use the right word. You can dissolve them. And when I read through the law, dissolution does not mean that they cannot even follow the particular people involved in judicial proceedings. So you can dissolve your NGO and yet you still find yourself in court.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you that that's not the first correction he's making. Lucas Teneng has a deep knowledge of the activities of NGOs in Cameroon and even out of here. During the discussion, you're going to discover that. At this moment, we are going to introduce another panelist. That is Paul Anchang. Yes, Paul Anchang, who is just coming in. Paul, you are a political analyst, and when we're talking about NGOs, We know that they are, from our introduction, supposed to be non-government affiliated. They are supposed to advocate for better public policy.
Right.
They are supposed to do social and public welfare services.
Right.
But from the description of what some of the NGOs are doing, we hear the Minister of Territorial Competent Authority of Territorial Administration saying that some of them do some other things, which means they have a political undertone somehow, or they infringe into that. So you are welcome to the set.
Thank you very much, Killian. Welcome as well to other co-panelists as well. Happy Sunday to all those watching us as well. Thank you to CRTV for having me as a political analyst. As just like you rightly said, I think the word for it is in conformity, because when you have an association or a non-governmental organization, you have to be in conformity. Conformity means what for back at home? For those who are back at home, means that in your objectives and your statutes, what you actually initially wrote for in terms of approval from the government is what you're actually doing. So you have to be in conformity with that, and you also have to give report according to that. So you have a report and you have a financial report. Now, when the government notices, or the services of the government notice that there is non-conformity due to the regulation and due to the laws, just like Barrister rightly stated, then there is where there is a cause for an investigation. Just as you rightly said, there was a suspension, investigations are carried out. So it's not only the Ministry of Territorial Administration, but as we'll go into the course of it, we would understand that there are also other entities of the government that follow up, because it's just not one ministry, it's the government in itself.
And our topic today is the flip side of NGOs.
Right.
We are questioning whether it is dangerous. You know, NGOs, we know since they are non-profit making, they don't pay taxes.
Right.
They don't pay so many other things. They have exoneration from so many kinds of imported material and the rest. But even control, if care is not taken because they are respected, they could slip in dangerous things into the country, and they could also carry out activities that are not Republican. That's why we bring you. So NGOs should be followed up closely.
I think you're right there, you're alluding to the administrative tolerance that has been a precedent, and which many associations or non-governmental organizations, in terms of their management, have gotten used to that laissez-faire. So when we see the government coming out now with a strong force saying that they no longer want to be able to consider this administrative tolerance or laissez-faire in the management, it means that they are putting an eye. And when we look at it on the political side, what would that mean? It would mean that in terms of the financing, because most of these associations, just like my other panelists rightly say, they are on the fringe, which means that for associations, they are the members that contribute. For non-governmental organizations, they can have solicitations of financing from foreign companies or from foreign donations, as you might like to call it. But now the source of it is what could look at in terms of the declaration. That's where there is a gap, because if the source of the financing is not identified, if these people are not scrupulous, that's when we hear of money laundering, financing of terrorism, because the funds which are allocated should be for a purpose. But if this purpose is not identified, it means that these are illicit funds which are going into illicit hands and are going for illicit functions.
And we want to stop that in Cameroon. The minister gives them January 31st.
31st, yeah.
31st at the deadline to declare everything they have, the activities and what they have. Yes, we were just at the interesting, if you like, part of this program. We are going to kickstart this time with press review done for us by Romeo Kenya. And after that, we're going to delve into the discussion. It's going to be a debate that I promise you it will be hot. Stay with us.
Green light for the 2025 state budget of 7,317.7 billion CFA francs, as Cameroon Tribune highlights major project to be executed in the upcoming year. But Eco Outlook says galloping inflation imminent in 2025 as government envisages another fuel price hike just when citizens must declare their income, but officials must not constitutionally declare their assets in a spectrum of hard, harsh and brutal times, the Post reviews. And while the eagle's eye in a bird's eye view right Honorable Atewong Fojo frowns at opposition MPs for using 2025 draft budget to stage a presidential campaign outing. Cameroon Insider argues that MPs are in for transparent pools in 2025 presidentials. Elsewhere, The Sun reports that President Paul Biya has granted CFA France 40 million for Sase College renovation and municipal update on way indigenes raising over 10 million CFA francs for water project, while breaking news breaks the news of Ngembo people in Momo Division raising funds for a multi-purpose cultural complex in Yaoundé at a time Honorable Yeba Judith promotes Grassfield Cultural Festival from the Eagle's Eye. In other news, the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji, justifies suspension of NGOs. Newswatch has in its banner headline, Atanganji evoked money laundry, terrorism financing in the median, but Akere Muna Maurice come to condemn Atanganji's ban on NGOs, though Metro Tamfu tip victim becomes aggressor in the horizon. The voice rather voices in the spotlight with the Guardian pulse, pinpointing Anglophones flying Cameroon's flag abroad. Just when the Hirat Inc. Autonomous Sinking Fund praises Douala Port Authority's performance, yet dark times for lawyers, journalists, activists are echoed in the Daily Voice. These and more featured in the papers over the week.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us on Press Hour. We want to thank you so much, Romeo Kenny, for reading the papers for Press Hour. Our topic is the flip side of NGOs. Is it dangerous? This follows the suspension of some NGOs in Cameroon by the Minister of Territorial Administration, who is the competent minister. There are some other ministers, of course, ministries that have to deal with that. For example, Paul and Chang was talking about ministries. When it comes to that, we know justice is involved. Some other ministries are involved. But the person who gatekeeps is the Minister of Territorial Administration. Now, as a journalist on the set, Lucas, we are reading off the suspension of the Minister of Territorial Administration of these NGOs.
Yeah, the minister...
We have essentially Redact 1, Redact 2, and 2 others.
I don't want to go into the details of Redact 1 and Redact 2, because when the minister himself, during his press conference, said Redact 1 was a declaration of an association that was done at the level of the senior divisional officer, and then the same people went and forged and came out with Redact 2 that is not declared, and it is being used for other things. But what I'm saying is that the Minister of Territorial Administration based his suspension. He said he was basing his suspension from reports from the National Financial Investigation Agency of Cameroon. Because you see, you know, in Cameroon now, you cannot, if you even go to deposit your money in the bank, they will ask you the source of the money. So, and if you want to send money out of the country because they want to avoid what we call money laundering and want to avoid capital flight, once you send money out of the country, you must explain why. So, the minister is saying if money has to come back to the country, if money has to come to the country for NGOs or associations, they must know the source. He said some people are blacklisted as drug lords. And if a drug lord sends money to an NGO here in Cameroon, and the NGO finances an association, the NGO association is an accomplice to that drug trafficking. And he mentioned a fabulous sum of 16 billion that was 16 billion francs that was acquired by the 5 NGOs. It's not
under suspicion.
The 5 NGOs under suspicion, and that 16 billion is not small money. It's much
it is
money.
not. 16 billion
is much money. And he said this 16 billion has not been justified. How has it not been justified? It has not been justified because, as I have my co-panelists here who operate in associations and NGOs, when you write a project and you submit a project, the project has a timeline, has a time frame, it has the funding, the financial expenditure. If you request 100, say 20 million, that you want to construct a toilet somewhere for 20 million. When your funder sends 20 million, there are some overheads that you have to carry, and maybe you might spend 40 million. But if at the end of the day, you request for 20 million and you spend 3 million, what do you do with the rest of that money? What do you do with it? And then, people who are proprietors of NGOs, or like the country, my country director who is sitting here, is a human being. He is a political being. The flip side of it is that these people are political beings. Do they do contribution? Do they take money for NGOs and contribute in some political activities? Or they do the money, they receive the money for NGOs and they use it for the purpose for that money was intended. Yes. So when they come and deposit their activity report, the minister has to look, okay, this NGO said I was going to build a toilet here. They look at the costing of the toilet and they look at what you presented as your the funders gave you and see how much you spend. If there's a discrepancy, there's a cause for concern. I know of NGOs that are doing quite a lot to help the government here. We're talking about hate speech now. I know of NGOs that have been helping the government to curb hate speech. I know of NGOs that have been going to camps, refugee camps, to talk about mental health of women. But how much did you receive as funding? And how much did you spend?
Okay.
What did you do with the balance of what remained? Is a question.
That question I will ask those who work or own NGOs. But before I go there, Lucas just made mention of some political implications, and we have a political analyst.
Right.
You're not going to go back to what you said earlier.
Right.
You're going to follow from what he has said.
Right.
Tell us where it becomes so delicate and dangerous for the state.
Sure, it becomes delicate and dangerous because first, in terms of constitutionality, by the law, it's law number 90/53 that regulates associations. It's law number 99 that regulates the applicable, in terms of the legality. But now it's law number 90/56 that judges political parties. So there's a duplicity of roles here which has a conflict of interest. That's where it plays. So I think where the government is trying to be able to fight against this administrative tolerance, which turns into a political interest, is be able to say, state your role and state your actions and your objectives and be able to declare them. Because also we understand that we're in the declaration regime in terms of the budgetary year in Cameroon. So things are changing. So that's where there's a conflict of interest, where the government is saying in its regalian duties, it's saying you cannot use the canopy of associations and non-governmental organizations when we do not know the sources of financing, when they do not match or there's a benchmark between the amount of the source of the financing and the objectives and the expenditure within the year, because there's also the financial report, which you rightly said. And so that's where there's really a benchmark, because you cannot receive, just like you rightly said, maybe in your justifications 40 million in terms of a donation for a school, but you actually see in the bank accounts 900 million. And so that's where there's a conflict of interest in that particular sense, where people who might be heading these associations or non-governmental associations have other caskets and political aspects. And I think that's where it gets a little bit disturbing, so the local population might be able to understand, because once there's a duplicity and a conflict of interest on a political casket and a non-governmental casket for non-profit, which is not for the interest, which is for interest of local population, that's where there's a nuance.
Thank you. Now I come to someone who is a country director of an international non-governmental organization, Open Dreams, which he told us is doing a lot for Cameroon. Like Lucas said, yes, like we also said in our introduction to this program, there are NGOs that are doing a lot. But do you find yourself in the minister's suspension? What you listen to Lucas, you must have a reaction to that, and then I launch you further.
Okay, great. I have quite a number of issues to say. First of all, start by saying that I've followed up very keenly the outings of the ministers and the outings of the people of the NGOs suspended. What has been lacking, grossly lacking, is that both parties, they're talking to the public. They've not like, hey, like the minister is the minister. The minister would say, okay, you who run these NGOs, can you come over? I've been going through your reports and there are a few questions for me to answer. Summon them, let them come and explain whatever may not be very clear. We've not seen that. And then we see the minister, the minister is talking to the public, the people of the NGOs, they are going to the public and talking, and a lot of them are talking things that sometimes, you need to, they need to talk with so much evidence. They need to talk concretely. Just because much money is received, you don't quickly say, it might be used to sponsor whatever. Just go into the details and look, this money came in. What did it go in for? Look at the records. Like every year, we submit reports at the Ministry of Territorial Administration. We submit everything they ask us to submit.
That is you. Do you think those suspended do the same? That's the question.
Well, yes. So I've so far spoken with some of them. They said they did not get any invitation from the minister to explain anything. Like, for instance, for projects that are carried out, if an amount of money
let me just ask you before you continue.
Yes.
Do you expect the minister to get reports from the National Financial Investigative Agency, which was even sparked by an international organization?
Yes.
It's still investigating, to go begging non-governmental organization to come or to get into it, take the action he took, for them now to rush to come and justify? I don't know.
Not at all. Not at all. That amount, in fact, the amount of money that is grossly mentioned, there needs to be clarity on what money came in for what purpose. And if it was like a project, ask for the project, the project proposal, the project title, and then you start checking, this was allocated for this, has this been done? So that when you are talking, you are talking in concrete terms. For instance, the people of the NGOs, they were complaining that they didn't have a chance to to explain themselves. Like, I don't think any of those people will receive an invitation from the minister, come explain, and they will not come. They will readily come.
Did you attend the press conference of the minister?
I didn't attend the press conference, but I followed everything. And one of the things I heard from the minister was that the NGOs took much more than they should have taken. But then we look at the law, we don't see any cap on that. Asking for justification is very clear.
I think the law is clear on that. The law is clear on that. The law is clear on that. Article 11 of association says you are not even supposed to take.
You're talking of association. We're talking of international, of NGOs. So that's something very different.
I think for you to get clarified, I will come back to you. We got an excerpt of the press conference that the minister granted. Just watch him, and maybe you will not be talking about there are certain things that are clear and not. Let us watch the minister answer.
Okay. I suspended 5 associations and NGOs last week. And I don't want people to misinterpret what was done by the minister. We are engaging a heavy fight against illegal funding of NGOs and associations. We have to put in place restrictive measures against money laundering and financing of terrorism. We have to sensitize all our partners, leaders of NGOs, associations, foreign associations, on all the legal instruments in Cameroon and in the CEMAC region governing the activities of NGOs and associations. And I wish to tell all of you, maybe for public consumption or public opinion, that suspending the NGOs has nothing to do with public liberties, nothing. On the contrary, what the Minat has done is to put an end to what you people we call administrative tolerance, putting us in a very difficult situation. As you all know, Gafi, which is an international agency fighting against money laundering, has put our country in the gray zone, indicating that we are not doing much to fight against money laundering and financing of terrorism. And if at the end we are blacklisted, it will be very difficult even for our businessmen to do their operations with other countries. So we have to put in place and tell our partners that we have all the legal instruments to fight against money laundering and the financing of terrorism. And we have to implement these laws for the interest of our country and of our population. I've given examples. The NGOs that we suspended and associations collected close to 16 billion francs in a very short space of time. And the national agency in charge of financial investigation sent us a report that there's something which is wrong. And when we consulted the documents in our ministry, it was obvious that the funding had nothing to do with the activities of the associations and the NGOs. So we had to take that decision immediately to suspend them.
I think we followed it. It's clear what the minister said. He has made mention several times of assuring our partners that we are under legal law, that are under laws, legal dispositions that control the activities of NGOs and associations. And he has talked about sensitizing even the NGOs on legal matters. Yes, we have a legal mind. We are reading of this in terms of the 1990 social communication, like liberty laws, and then what has happened.
We just have to know that freedom of association is guaranteed from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the preamble of the Constitution. Freedom of association is guaranteed. Now, the laws that govern associations and NGOs in Cameroon, we have two laws, Law number 90/553 of December 1990, and Law number 99/14 of December 22, 1999. These laws govern associations and the non-governmental organizations. If you look at Article 2 of the 1990 Liberty Law, it clearly states that as associations are non-profit making, they are non-governmental, and they are apolitical. So these are the three criteria that have to be followed when you want to classify an association or want to consider association as working within the ambit of the law. It is also spelled bound in Section 4 of the 1990 law that an association that has objectives that does not tantamount to, or objective that tamper with the integrity of the state and other are considered to be null and void, which means for an association or an NGO to be legalized, they must have had clearly spelled out objectives on their area of activity or their domain of action. And it is based on this that the government grants them the authorization. I mean, for cases of NGOs where they need an authorization, and same thing for associations where they just need a mere declaration. In fact, when you declare your association, if the government sees that it violates the certain provisions of the law, the government will immediately ban or reject the declaration. Because the law says with association, when you declare, after a certain period, if you don't get any response from the administration, then you are deemed to be authorized. So, when the government stays quiet or authorizes, it's because the government has scrutinized and seen that the objectives, they tie with what is expected of NGOs. So, we know that when you look at Article 9 of the Law on Association, associations and NGOs, they are managed freely, which means government has nothing to do with the running of the association. But those associations must work in accordance with their objectives, that is, their articles of association and applicable laws. Now, which means the role of government is to ensure that what you are doing, does it tie with your objectives, and is there anything that violates the law? If you respond positively to this, then if your response is okay to these two questions, then fine. But if you violate any of these two principles, the government then comes in to either suspend or dissolve your association.
Thank you. And we are just playing excerpts of what the minister said. A part of what he said during the press conference is that any association, non-governmental organization, if you receive up to 500,000 francs, you're supposed to declare immediately. Now, you are executive director of an association. Where do you find yourself in what the barrister has said and in what the minister said?
So, if you permit me, I would like to say three things.
Yes, you're permitted.
So, the first thing I would like to say is that it is time for a dialogue in this country between the government and civil society organizations. the situation as it was in 1990 is not the same reality today. The laws as they were framed up in 1990, I think today are no longer adequate. We're in a situation where we have 56,000 associations in Cameroon today. There are about 100 NGOs, and for you to become an NGO, you have to apply, because there is a prime ministerial decree that was passed in 2002 stating the conditions of how how an association, transforms into an NGO.
Yes.
Yeah, and that process is very difficult, because it is clear that NGOs can receive money from the government. Actually, they can receive money from public agencies. But there was a law, Mr. Lucas cited, that the 1990 law, Article 11, clearly prohibits associations, clearly, that they cannot receive funding from government, from any public agencies. Now, when you think about that, and you look at the reality of Cameroon today, in the Northwest and Southwest, there are victims of torture, there are different kinds of people who are running away from conflicts, IDPs, people who have, they're confronting the inadequacies. In fact, they're confronting government, I would say government institutions that are no longer, they're not capable to manage some of the problems that these people are going through. And you have associations and NGOs coming under the umbrella of even the Office of the United Nations Office on Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA. They have like 59 organizations right now under the umbrella of OCHA that are working in the Northwest and Southwest to help people. You have Médecins Sans Frontières, getting people to hospital, providing help and aid, medical assistance. Now, it is not the obligation of associations to do that. It is the government obligation. Government has an obligation to take care of victims of torture. And in situations like that, you cannot transfer that obligation to associations, right? Now, what we find is that people, we agree that there have been, sometimes the pursuit of law and other policies in the Northwest and Southwest that have overstepped the legal reach. We find places like Ngabo, for example, where, the military overstepped its legal reach. In some situations like that, people are scared to go back to the government institutions for remedies. They prefer to go to associations and NGOs to find assistance and aid. Now, this is not only happening in Cameroon, it is happened elsewhere. In Brazil and in South Africa. Let me just complete this point. Now, what the Commission on Human Rights has suggested then is that in one of its general comments, I think general comment number 4, on this situation of victims not going back to government institutions to get aid and preferring to go to NGOs, is that the government, since it is its obligation, the government should now fund NGOs in order that they would be able to carry out this task. You see, and they are doing so in the Northwest and Southwest. If the government puts a bar, like they're doing in law number 90, saying that associations cannot receive funding, where do you want these victims to go? Where do you want the victims of entirely displaced? Where do you want them? Where do you want them to receive aid?
Now, let me ask you whether you know the notion of army and nation. That is, the army, that's the defense and security forces, helping the citizens, the local population that is suffering.
Yes.
And we must be people who testify to the fact that you have this in all our regions, where in hospital, where in social services, other social services, even where in education.
Yeah.
And apart from their regalian protection role of people and their goods, that they are doing that.
Yeah.
When you just reject globally, the government is not doing anything. If government were not doing anything,
we're not saying the government is not doing anything. That's not what we're saying.
You get the impression that government has abandoned
we are saying that the government today is, the institutions are ill-equipped to manage the size of the problems that people are confronting down there. There are many people, IDPs, hundreds of thousands, displaced across Cameroon. It's a reality, it's a fact. I'm not saying something that is happening outside Cameroon. These people are going through suffering, and they're looking for help from everywhere. And it is associations that are coming in to step up to help in some circumstances. When you come and you put a ban,
those associations not playing their role by helping? That's the question.
They're playing their role. So when you say you're tolerating the associations, tolerating them, it doesn't speak.
Tolerating in this sense, there are laws that associations have not conform to. And by
honestly,
that
Mr.
administrative
Killian,
tolerance is this.
Let me just make a point.
This is exactly, I will let you speak. You asked for to talk about 3 points. I don't know whether you are exhausting or not. I will give you that time.
Right.
Administrative tolerance is government needs you to provide 10 documents to be fully functional. You have maybe only declared. You have not given 2, you have not given 3, or you have given up to 9. You have not given the 10th. Government allows you to function. That's administrative tolerance. I think that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about some other
It's funding. It's the administrative tolerance that government is talking about is funding. Article 11 of the law of 1990 says that associations cannot receive funding. When the government allows us to receive funding, that is tolerance. That is really the tolerance that the minister is talking about. That is why, and for me, we're not even big players. We don't receive 16 billion francs. But for me, my experience is you even receive 20, 30 million francs. There is no way that money is going to be dropped into your account until you have provided everything, evidence of the grant agreement, what you're going to do with it. Is clearly you deposit those things at the bank before the money can be able to.
That's why your association has not been suspended.
And there are people.
Then that's why your association has not been suspended. I think so.
I believe that it is general practice. For me, when I go through that, I believe that it is a practice that we have across the board. So I wonder how organizations will receive 16 billion francs, and the government claims that they don't know how this money got into their accounts. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Yes, and when they deposit that amount of money in your account, they follow up till you provide a project report. Exactly. And everything is justified. And there is a term within which you are supposed to be subject to investigations. Like they give you 3 years, 5 years, that any time they can come in for questions. And it's only thanks to such compliance that you can have more funding. Anyway, to quickly pick up from
that's for good organizations. But
yes.
We are talking about the flip side of non-governmental organization association, where people who don't have good intentions can pass through them.
Yes, I wish to quickly add this. Like I suggested, like you started off, there needs to be a dialogue. Yes, the people of the suspended NGO, they are saying the government has not brought them to ask them questions. So if, like the minister is talking of financing terrorism, money laundering, unless you bring these people, ask them questions, where did this money go to? Until you get answers that are not satisfactory, before you can conclude on things like that. Exactly. And please, I don't know, let me just quickly finish some. I mean, he touched quite a lot of things. Yes. Funding of NGOs, like here in Cameroon, we've been operating here in Cameroon for 10 years. And despite the fact that we've been incredibly successful, in fact, there's just no government office that doesn't know us, the work we do. But we've not had any indication from the government like supporting us. But we have invitations from Rwanda. They have a lot of money there, inviting us to come and establish there. Canada, the same thing. And on the aspect of registration he talked of, registration in Cameroon is not something so easy. The laws are very clear on that with timelines. But our government doesn't respect those ones. I sit here in Cameroon, and a few clicks on my laptop, I'm able to gauge status of the Economic and Social Council of the UN. So at the UN Council, in fact, any UN assembly, we have accreditation to sit there and make contributions from the ground. It is the same thing for Canada, but here in Cameroon, the registration process is like, I don't know how to describe it, which should not be the case. And then, like the minister said, that there's an organization, I just forgot the name of the organization, that is questioning Cameroon to be a little bit robust in controlling. But when we see, yes, when we see the government just bans or suspends NGOs. NGOs are in fact, that's the medium through which the United Nations function in most countries. Like you talked of, so when the government suspends, it is also not a good sign because it defeats. I mean, it defeats, first of all, it's like a rollback of the 1990 Democracy Association Law, which people fought so hard for. Exactly. So we should be improving on that rather than going backwards. Exactly. So it also discredits like the country, like an organization over there that is funding.
The minister says that without controlling, it can discredit.
Yeah, we understand. We understand. We're not saying that.
We follow that.
Yes, we're just advocating that there are lots of good NGOs, and to just to suspend and go on the press and make so much when the investigations are yet to be done. That's something concerning. Exactly. Because some of those people need to come and make their case. Once we establish that they clearly have diverted money into this, then we can, in fact, it should not only be like going on, they should be prosecuted for that. No, but then to go very far, they have not had a chance to talk. Because, in fact, you need to see the work that they do. Like the time Medicine Sans Frontier was suspended in Bamenda, we are from Open Dreams. We work with a lot of scholars, and Most of those scholars are medical doctors. The medical doctors are in the field. They have no political ambition. They're just there to make sure a mother who is to deliver has the essential herb. They're just there to make sure that for somebody who is so vulnerable has access to help. No, you don't want a whole bush because you want to kill a small rat.
Please, it looks like you know what I want to talk about and you want to,
we understand.
stifle it. There were proofs that in some of those vehicles of Médecins Sans Frontières, there were compromising weapons that were found.
That was unfortunate, and we are not denying that. We don't even have the competence to deny. If you look at an isolated, unfortunate incident compared to the number of people that are meriting that help. Because, you know, in the interiors, let me say one thing very unique about Médecins Sans Frontières. They don't work in the cities, or even if they work in the city, they are present in the interiors, where a lot of medical people have gone away because of, you know, security. And then these people take the risk to, you know, help. So the government somehow feel like...
James, you will continue to talk. James, you will continue to talk.
Okay.
Do you know what one rifle can do when you say do you know the damage, the havoc that one gun can do to a population when you minimize?
Often they say that the pen is stronger than the rifle. That ban with the pen has closed the whole region, access to a lot of medication functions. So you may not even be able to tell how much damage is being caused. Unlike the rifle where you can count 1 or 2. In fact, the two are non-comparable. The pen is far stronger than that. So I'm saying that there are ways we can handle this. There are ways we can handle. If you have the group of the people at heart, what you do, invite the Médecins Sans Frontières, tell them, please stop doing this. Just focus on this. And make sure you follow up. If they violate...
I like your peace approach.
Yes, if they violate, all the people, in situations of war crimes, individuals are involved, hold the people who carry the people and isolate them and then leave Médecins Sans Frontières to continue functioning. They also have some other people who can work.
Okay. Lucas.
I want to cue in from where he talked about the number of associations that are existing and the work they are doing. Their work is commendable. Now, he has said something that has caught my attention. He says the minister ought to have invited those guys and talk with them before going to the press. I understand him. Why do I understand him? Because the mere fact that they have talked about them means they can no longer have funding. But do you know in the country there's what we call conservatory laws, conservative rules, conservative decisions, measures. When something, because what everything the minister is doing now is even damage control mechanisms, because the damage has already been caused. We don't even know how much money has circulated and what that money has been done. Now, do you know that when you write a project for 5 years, let me done.
So we say no speculations.
Yes, when you write a project for 5 years, that's somebody who has an association. When you write a project for 5 years and you give a timeline for that project, it might be they might fund that project in 3 phases. Imagine that the project is 30 million, and then they send the first 10 million, and then you take the first 10 million, and that is just what we wanted, and you don't execute the project. You divert that 10 million and do something else, and you don't go for any other project. Do you know that you have not only defrauded the funder, you have committed a crime because you had maybe somebody was supposed to operate in that very sector where you wanted to operate. You have taken that money, you've deprived the population.
And that's just another speculation. So let's talk concrete things. Did you separate to that? That's why we want to hear.
One thing that's very interesting is, I think when somebody talks about NGOs and associations from an outsider perspective, like we are in the sector, when they fund you and they divide the project into phases, you have to write an audit report. For example, you have to call an external auditor to audit your organization. And until the reports are clear, the funders are not proceeding to fund you. I mean, this is what we go to. I've gone through this process for 10 years. I can tell you.
Same with us.
10 years. Every year you have to do an audit. And I think that some of the best practices that I think we're even neglecting is coming from NGOs. Yeah. And we should be able to go towards them and find out
look at our top.
It is something for me. I'm very surprised that NGOs would not even constitute the large bulk of money laundering that will be happening in Cameroon.
Now,
why are they so quick to look at?
Not just there's a solution in law.
Yes, there's a solution in law.
There's a solution in law. When I said if people respect the existing laws, I'm sure we'll be out of this conflict. If you look at Article 15 of the law on NGO, it clearly states that the NGO shall draw up the statement of their revenue and expenditure, and shall draw up their financial accounts of the preceding years, as well as take inventory of their movable and immovable property. Sub 2. These shall be forwarded to the Minister of Territorial Administration within 60 days of the closure of the financial report, which means every NGO, you are not supposed to wait for the government to ask for the report. You are supposed to submit your report.
Thank you.
If they must submit the report, the financial report,
that,
and again,
that law is very clear.
And just a comment. It's
contrary to that.
And let me learn, when an NGO violates any of these laws, the Minister of Territorial Administration has the powers to suspend the NGO upon a written report from the senior divisional officer. The Minister of Territorial Administration has the power to dissolve an NGO. But again, I think Mr. Tene said that, but what does it mean that there's no recourse? The law states that when you receive a ban or suspension decision, you have 10 days to petition the administrative court. So you have the opportunity to be able to explain your story to see if the minister was right in banning your organization or not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think that that solution brings that debate of dialogue or of inviting the NGOs before the minister's outing. I think that one is very clear.
No, I think I understood what you were saying. So
no, are you saying you don't understand?
No, because I mean dialogue, as I propose that dialogue is something that I'm speaking about from the global perspective.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, so there are many problems with the governance of the sector.
The government getting it and invite.
It is because that platform was not even, it is because the platform for dialogue is not even existent. That is why they would go through this ad hoc processes.
I think that's the solution.
So we need to get
the proposal that you're bringing.
That permits for dialogue between associations and NGOs and the government, so that some of these issues are raised for the sector. We cannot just sit in the office and ban associations without even having a conversation with them.
It's confrontational kind of. James, you are the ones. It involves you first of all. Have you made any proposal about such a platform of dialogue?
I actually, my thesis, my master's thesis was about collaborative governance.
Thesis.
I mean, because this is a very formal proposal that I made, really, in Cameroon.
I'm asking, this is my question, Have you sat with James, you're used to him and some others, and proposed that platform of dialogue?
I've done this.
Formally?
I've organized 2 meetings, state civil society dialogue, and in which the guy from Minat, who is even in charge of the NGO cluster, he was there in those meetings. And we raised points that the law, this current law of 1990, should be reformed. And he accepted with some of the reasons that we were proposing.
Have you done it in writing? We've said that administration is written. Have you done it in writing? Meeting is not writing. Meeting is talking. Have you done it? Have you done it by writing?
We submit reports even to Minat as well. Election reports, all kinds of reports.
No, on dialogue. We are talking about a platform for dialogue. It's something else. It's not about reporting. Well, maybe my suggestion to you, as you have raised this very wonderful point, is that you should go sit and do a written proposal on a platform of dialogue. Thank you very much. We are going to have exactly talking about the suspension, the deadline that all of you and all those who are not conforming with the law have to do before January 31. That's January 31, 2025. The minister again, let us get the deadlines for those who do not respect the law in this sector, non-governmental organizations.
9. That is the 30th of January 2025. All associations, NGOs, and foreign associations in Cameroon must send to us their reports on the activities for the past 2 or 3 years. And your report must be supported by a financial report. Meaning that if you receive, let's say, let me give an example, 100 million francs to build 3 classrooms, 4 classrooms, health centers, in your report, we must have this proof that effectively the money you receive, you have constructed your orphanage, your health center, and the DO who is your administrative authority, should confirm that or ascertain that effectively you received 100 million francs from this person and or from this corporation for the construction of a health center, an orphanage or classroom, and effectively you have done that.
More clarifications on that. At one point we were talking about that would have been then the correction. We've been talking about the 31st of January 2025. The minister's date is the 30th of January 2025 for all NGOs, associations to conform. Now we are going to move out of this program, beginning with Paul Anchang, political analyst. What's the way out of this funding of non-governmental organizations from a political
standpoint? It's very interesting. I've heard some of the comments, and I think for those back at home to understand, non-governmental organizations most of the time are headed by apolitical activists, which means that they don't have a political agenda. So that's why I remind those at home, and sometimes they forget that not all of them are apolitical, which means that there's a majority of them that are apolitical, just like the rightful honored guests that we have today. But in their corporation, in their domain, there are so many who are political as well. That's where there's a real conflict of interest with government. And I think in Africa per se, not only in Cameroon, we see a revival and a change in the Pan-Africanism of government, where they no longer depend on certain Occidental powers as well. You could see in Mali, you could see in Niger. So this funding in itself, where you see non-governmental organizations who are desperate for funding, the issue here becomes paradoxical, because do you scrutinize those who fund you because you are desperate for funding? And so some of the, what are the premises that these funders give you money? And so sometimes you would understand that sometimes the agenda for those who fund are sometimes like homosexuality, and that doesn't necessarily rhyme with the context of most African nations and their customs and their culture. So there's a conflict of interest that's there, and this conflict of interest plays with the funding, and that's where the governments are very much more strict on the transparency.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Karsten, one thing you have brought up, which I note, is that your proposal is there should be a platform for dialogue. What else will you propose as a way out of this?
The other thing is that the government should review the laws. You cannot tie up non-governmental organizations with bureaucratic red tape and then render them vulnerable to criminalization, just because the laws, are not clear, and then there is what they call administrative tolerance. Second thing is, if we don't want associations to receive money that the government terms illicit, why don't we fund associations in Cameroon? In the United States, they have US aid. The other countries have DFID, Canadian aid. Why can't we create Khmer aid, for example, which is a structure that is equipped with funding, and then it funds associations instead of saying that we are receiving illicit funding from outside?
Thank you very much. Your proposals are so clear. James, please.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I just pick up from him. So the law was, we had the 1990 law, 1999 law. This is 2004. There are conflicts. We need another law. So this is the moment to bring all the associations together, for a way forward. Because everybody is working towards the interests of this country, a lot of the NGO people. And then, so to say quickly too, if you look at like how much comes into Central Africa for NGOs compared to what goes into Eastern Africa and Southern Africa, you see that we're not even started yet because of a lot of repressive laws. So these laws don't work for the general good of the people. Let the laws work to support the majority of the people than to protect the interests of an isolated few.
Thank you. That's a point that Karsten raised. Yes.
My take-home message is that we will not, for the sake of administrative tolerance, allow NGOs to act
with impunity
and jeopardize the security and the national unity of the state.
Okay.
That is the most paramount thing. And if you see, most of the countries have been destabilized. They have been destabilized by NGOs and associations.
Yeah, that becomes a smooth path
Yes.
For money laundering, for
yes.
funding of terrorism, and
but
rebellion.
NGOs in Cameroon are not terrorists.
Okay, thank
When
you very
say that,
much.
no,
NGOs are
Cameroon,
not
please
terrorists.
produce the evidence.
NGOs are not
okay.
terrorists.
Say we
NGOs and
talk
associations are not
facts.
terrorists. This
What
is something
he
that
is
has to be
suggesting
very,
with
that
this-
has to be made clear.
Yeah,
in
we
this
should not let it
platform.
happen in
Statements
Cameroon
without
without
evidence.
We should not
NGOs
let it
they are
happen in
not
Cameroon.
terrorists.
Yeah,
They are
the
not
last
terrorists.
word,
It's
the
something
last word,
that cannot be accepted.
from Barrister, so many of them are talking about law,
Yes,
law,
no.
and you're
I
man of
think
the
that
law.
yes, we have our laws. They might not be perfect, but if we respected the laws as it is, I think would have resolved part of this conflict we're talking about. It's true. There's need to review the laws. There is for what comes to my mind, we should be able to also identify the source of the funding of the NGO. That is, who are those who are financing NGOs in Cameroon? I mean, that are they receiving money that is from dirty sources? Are they receiving dirty monies? So I think that those are some of the things, because the law as it is today does not really filter who can give monies to NGOs in Cameroon. So I think that when we will do a revision of the laws, we might be able to filter which are the organizations that can finance philanthropic activities in Cameroon. In that way, the government can actually have an eye if there's a hidden agenda on any philanthropy or organization trying to finance NGO activities in Cameroon.
Thank you very much, Fombad Munjem, Barrister at Law. Thank you so much, Ateki Seta Karsten, Executive Director of Network for Solidarity, Empowerment and Transformation for All News Sector. Thank you to James Akaba, Country Director, Open Dreams. Thank you, Tenant Lucas Chefro, publisher for the Reporter newspaper. And thank you a lot, Paul Anchang, who's a political analyst. Ladies and gentlemen, above all, I want to thank you for watching. But you have another chance of watching this program on Monday at 2:30 on CRTV Premium, and on Wednesday on CRTV News at 9 p.m. after the news in French. Thanks once again for watching.
Clap a lot louder. I see it clapping a lot enough.
Just